I wonder if this Sherlock Holmes play is going to be me desperately trying to play Sherlock Holmes. I was thinking maybe the room is too hot due to the fact that it's summer. Could be the reason. But then that would state that the PlayStation's old. It's a PlayStation 5. It's not that old. This thing's gonna last for about a good 4 to 5 years before they start acting up. It's just networking, I believe. Just trying to get at least 20 minutes off is annoying. It's just the amount of people that are online, interruptions with regards to other network outside of your bandwidth, and then people who are on your bandwidth at the same time. It's annoying, so I'm going to try to see if I can move as fast as I can today with minimal talking, if possible, just to get stuff done. I don't know why I keep going with this game, but I believe that I'm not trying to play this game beyond July or all the way into July, because July is when the new anime stuff comes and I won't have time for Sherlock Holmes then. That's the main reason why. Plus I have some designs that I need to upload, work on it in Photoshop and Illustrator, and since those are paid plans, which I pay a plan for the Photoshop on a monthly basis, I have to invest time into those things and effort. You know, when you go on people's website, or when an employer hires you and you look at your resume and see what you can and can't do, they're not factoring the amount of money you have to pay just to use certain programs, because you have to pay to use the program, not only to learn and know the program, but you have to pay to use it. So you paying to use it is also a factor, because that's money lost, but gains is in the development of the product. So effort and money is used into creating your product, not just time. Effort, money, and time. All of those things have to be considered. People who don't consider those things are called bourgeois accountants. They don't give a shit about anything but themselves, and they should be treated the same way too. So I'm gonna attempt to move fast on this one, just so I could get some type of network going before a network decides to act up again. Solve mystery of the vanished train. Inspect the beach. Okay, so next up is the beach. I deleted the last video because I'm not gonna do a 20-minute video just
Here
because the internet acts like a shit.
That is located near the quarry and Doncaster station. It doesn't look like a very good place to rest.
Okay, we came down here, and these tracks are...
These traces were made by a carriage. Look. The distance between the tracks is about 6 feet 7 inches.
6 feet 7 inches. That's wide enough for a carriage, yes. But the one thing
The vehicle pressed this stone into the ground. It would have been quite heavy.
Okay, so he did address my issue the last time he did investigation, lining stuff. He didn't account for the weight with the last one, or the last two.
The vehicle would have been heavy, as these tracks are quite deep. These traces are relatively fresh and were made by a large truck loaded with materials.
Yes.
The traces found at the disassembled shed near Evesham and at the lake were from the same vehicle.
So that's the first one I've gotten wrong since. I mean, he does a special transport was used to carry something very heavy. So is Holmes basically saying stolen rail tracks doesn't necessarily have to mean, oh, I know what it is. It's the prototype. So, okay. Flooded and the one thing it's hard to do with regards to this is to tether. They're tethering lines. We have to untether and then tether them back together. So we now know that it has nothing to do with the tracks that was on the cart. It's more likely they stole the prototype and went down in the direction. So at least I know where the prototype direction was going. Concealment or sabotage. The mines were collapsed with dynamite. Somebody wanted to close them intentionally. Yep. And then it says the mines were collapsed to hide train. Dynamite was used for the train. Well, that's also that's an assumption that it's hidden and is hidden. That's also an assumption that it was collapsed to hide it. Could have been collapsed for other reasons other than to hide it. The only true thing is someone wanted to collapse it, so the most logical, non-theoretical one is this one, sabotage. Now we have two here. Could be sunk or cannot be sunk. So, putting theories aside and only facts based on evidence and deduction. The train could have been sunk in the flood quarry at Donchester. So I assume that that could be the case, but I also assume that it could be the tracks or the prototype. But why would they want to submerge something that's useful? They don't know how it will work. So the only two things that needed to actually be thrown into the lake is evidence of their presence there that they touch, which could be the tracks or the train itself. But why would they want to sink a big ass train? So it could be sunk. Seems very unlikely. The train cannot be sunk in the flood quarry because the old railway that leads there is missing some rails. And this is another thing that's an assumption as well. Just because it's missing some rails, which is the most likely case, it can't be sunk because it has to go on rails to follow into the lake. But as I've noticed, missing rails were popped up at various different places as well. Just like missing rails towards the mine were missing, so the train cannot go into the mine because the rails there were missing. So you can't say it went into the mine either because there was no rails to go into the mine. It's like it can't now be sunk because there was no rails to go into there. The rails have to be taken from the shed at Evesham and at various different parts throughout the railway to build to go towards something, but you don't know what the something that it's going towards is. So you cannot say, which is also an assumption, they used it at the flooded area, it went into the water, and then they removed it thereafter, because that would be considered an assumption. Just like you put it at the train location, it went through the train, blow up the train entrance towards the mine, the train exit on the other side, and then they remove the tracks thereafter. Also an assumption. So it cannot be sunk. If Holmes agreed that it's sunk, then he's doing things not based on evidence and removing fiction from fact. He's just doing a theoretical guesstimation rather than estimation. But estimation is typically based on calculation of a pendulum, but that's also estimation, probability, which has nothing to do with actual physical facts. All right. Oh, there are other things as well. Clues. I have my fan on in the back simply because it's a hot summer day and a PlayStation does heat up over time. Not just a telegram. Has nothing to do with that. That. Nothing to do with that. I'm just a receipt for money. Wait, what is the telegram again? Okay, so he reported the arrival for the train, but there's no evidence that he saw the train either. And then he received money, which has nothing to do with the train, and has nothing to do with that, has nothing to do with that, has nothing to do with that. Stolen train tracks has nothing to do with the Dorchester money or special transport. Because I believe I connected them before, but they weren't attached, so I'll go with my theory. This one is pointing in the direction upwards. This one is pointing in the direction downwards. So this is going here, this line is going here, this line is going here, they're going to intersect here, here, and here, right around here. And this line is going this way. So the only one line that's deviating is this one. So it's basically telling me that I might be wrong with regards to believing that Robinson's motive, loss of prototype, will bring lots of money, easy money to Mr. Robinson, thanks to the insurance. And this is basically saying that's untrue. That Robinson is simply a victim, which is highly unlikely. A guy who's committing fraud is a victim. Loss of machines is a disaster, so I don't believe that at all. But if that's the case, then this line going down here should be proceeding towards the Robinson one. It's like this. Oh no, wait a minute. So I had it right. Yeah. Okay, so, and this one. Wait, let me untether these two. Yep. So this one is basically telling me this one is correct for Robinson. The train were passed through. The train never passed through Chesterfield Station. The station master was drunk and his testimony seems unreliable. He could have sent the telegraph without witnessing. Wait a minute. I had this correct. Why did I switch it to this one? This is the one that I chosen, so I wasn't incorrect. I chose that one. What the hell is going on? Yeah, I chose the right one. Why did it switch? Alright, I must have been testing something. Yeah, but this is the right one. I didn't know why the hell I picked this one. So everything's going towards Robinson. And this one is kind of weird though. It says the Mexican held no grudge against the Chileans, the people who remained on the train after the train disappeared. And the Mexicans were from a different company. The different company originally wanted to buy out the mine, but the Chileans bought out the mine. So it seems the game is seeming to try to say the Chileans are the real villains of the story. But yes, the Mexican people were the ones who removed the tracks. So if the Chileans really are stealing the prototype, like how would they be able to steal it? If the Mexicans, okay, let's say the Mexicans are trying to stop them from taking the prototype. because they knew that they could deviate following the pathways towards the mine. And the Mexicans took up the rail from the mine so they don't go down the mine route. So it's making it sound like the Chileans were in cahoots with possible Mr. Robinson. If that's the case, that would make sense. Them trying to stop the Chileans from taking the prototype, for which it's not really taken, because Robinson kind of knew. So that's my theory for right now. I believe the Mexicans are kind of are the bad guy, like the ones removing the tracks, but their intentions aren't villainous. That the villainous in this case is Robinson and probably the Chileans, but they're putting the Mexicans off as the ones who are actually stealing the prototype when they're actually stealing the tracks. If it's not that case, it's the reverse. So either way, I would be right. One, Chileans and Robinson, or the reverse, the most obvious, the Mexican company. That's what's going on. So I've now made my deduction towards who might actually be stealing this. The so-called Chileans and Mr. Robinson's together. And if they're unknown to the situation and they don't know what's going on, which is highly unlikely, then it's the Mexicans in league with Mr. Robinson to one-up the Chileans. So those are my three main suspects. The main one is the fraudulent Mr. Robinson, but he's not the one that physically is committing the crime, but he's the one that might be pulling the trigger. But it seems way too obvious and way too cliche and way too easy for him to be the bad guy. So the tomfoolery might actually be the real bad guy, might actually be the Chileans, the ones that you think are the most